Hello students, I hope you are doing well, studying properly and learning all your concepts. The man who knew too much. Is there any student of your class who has an answer to everything? Does he make the other students look and feel like fools? The armed forces are very particular about codes of conduct. Read this story about a soldier, Private Kelch, the lowest rank of the army, showing off his knowledge. I first met Private Kelch at the training depot. A man is liable to acquire in his first week of army life, together with his uniform, rifle and equipment, a nickname. What do people get? They get a nickname. Anyone who saw Private Kelch, lanky, stooping, frowning through horn-rimmed spectacles, understood why he was known as the professor. Those who had any doubts on the subject lost them after 5 minutes of conversation with him. So सबको क्या मिलता है? एक nickname मिलता है और Private Kelch को क्या दिया गया? He was called a professor. I remember the first lesson we had in musketry. We stood in an attentive circle while a sergeant, a man as dark and sun-dried as raisins, wearing Northwest Frontier ribbons, described the mechanism of a service rifle. The muzzle velocity or speed at which the bullet leaves the rifle, he told us, is well over 2,000 feet per second. A voice interrupted. 2,440 feet per second. It was the professor. So the professor corrected the sergeant. That's right, the sergeant said without enthusiasm and went on lecturing. When he had finished, he asked us questions, then hoping for revenge, he questioned the professor again and again. And what happened? The only result was to enhance the professor's glory. Technical definitions, the part of the rifle, its use and care, he had all of them by heart. The sergeant asked, "You had any training before? Did you know anything before?" The professor answered with a phrase that was to become familiar to all of us. "No, sergeant, it's all a matter of intelligent reading," he said. That it is all about intelligent reading. That was our introduction to him. He soon learned more about him. He saw that to that. He meant to get on, he told us. He had brains. He was sure to get a commission before long. As a first step, he meant to get a stripe. He wanted what? He wanted a stripe. In pursuit of his ambition, he worked hard. We had to give him credit for that. He borrowed training manuals and stayed up late at night reading them. He badgered the instructions with questions. He drilled with enthusiasm, and on route marches he was not only miraculously tireless but infuriated us all with his horrible heartiness. What about a song, chaps, is not greeted politely at the end of 30 miles. His salute at the pay table was a model to behold. When officers were in sight, he would swing his skinny arms and march to the canteen like a guardsman. So when he would see officers, he would march to the canteen. Day in and out, he lectured in his droning, remorseless voice on every aspect of human knowledge. At first, we had a certain respect for him, but soon we lived in terror of his approach. We tried to hit back at him with clumsy sarcasm and practical jokes. The professor scarcely noticed. He was too busy working for his stripe. Each time one of us made a mistake, the professor would publicly correct him. Whenever one of us shone, the professor outshone him. After a hard morning's work of cleaning out our hut, we listened in silence to the officer's praise. The professor would break out with a ringing, dutiful, beaming heart. "Thank you, sir." And somehow, how superior, how condescending he was, it was always. "Let me show you, old fellow." "No, you'll ruin your rifle that way, old man." That is what he would always say. We used to pride ourselves for aircraft recognition. Once out for a walk, we heard the drone of a plane flying high overhead. None of us could ever see it in the glare of the sun. Without even a glance upward, the professor announced, "That, of course, is a North American Harvard trainer. It can be unmistakably identified by the harsh engine note due to the high tip speed of the airscrew." So they loved recognizing aircrafts, and one day, what did he do? He recognized a drone that was flying upwards. What could a gang of louts like us with a man like that? How could they be together? None of us will ever forget the drowsy summer afternoon, which was such a turning point in the professor's life. We were sprawling contentedly on the warm gas while Corporal Turnbull was taking a lesson on the hand grenade. Corporate Turnbull was a young man, but he was not a man to be trifled with. He was come back from Dunkirk with all his equipment correct and accounted for and his pet kitten in his pocket. He was our hero, and we used to each other that he was so tough that you could hammer nails into him without him noticing. So you could put nails into him without him noticing. The outside of a grenade, as you can see, Corporate Turnbull was saying, divided into a large number of fragments to assist segmentation. 44. What's that? The corporal looked over his arm. 44 segments. The professor beamed at him. The professor taught him how many segments? 44 segments. The corporal said nothing, but his brows tightened. His brows were raised. He opened his mouth to resume. "And by the way, Corporal, we were all thunderstruck." The professor was speaking again. "Shouldn't you have started off with the 5 characteristics of the grenade? Our instructor at the other camp always used to, you know." In the silence that followed, a dark flush stained the tan on the corporal's face. "Here," he said at last, "you give this lecture." As if afraid to say any more, he tossed the grenade to the professor. Quite unabashed, Private Quelch climbed to his feet and, with the air of a man coming into his birthright, gave us a long lecture on grenade. He told a long lecture on grenade shamelessly. The squad listened in silence. Corporal Turnbull stood and watched impassive accent for a searching intentness of gaze. When the lecture was finished, he said, "Thank you, Private Quelch. Fall in with the others now." He did not speak again until we had fallen in and were waiting to be dismissed. Then he addressed us. "As some of you may have heard," he began deliberately, "the platoon officer has asked me to nominate one of you for—" He paused and looked lingering up and down and the ranks as if seeking final confirmation of a decision. So this was the great moment. Most of us could not help glancing at Private Quelch, who stood rigidly to attention and stared straight in front of him with an expression of self-conscious innocence. He was ready to get the stripe. "For permanent cookhouse duties, I have decided that Private Quelch is just the man for the job." He said that what is his new title? He has cookhouse duties. Of course, it was a joke for days afterwards, a joke and a joy to all of us. I remember though. What does he remember? My friend Trover and I were talking about it a few days later. We were returning from the canteen to our own hut. "Well," Trover remarked as we passed the cookhouse, "I reckon that geezer's had his gob stopped for a bit, eh?" I did not answer but took his arm and pointed to the cookhouse. Through the open door we could see the 3 cooks standing against the wall as if at bay, and from within came the monotonous beat of a familiar voice. "Really, I must protest against this abominably unscientific and unhygienic method of peeling potatoes. I only wanted to draw your attention to the sheer waste of vitamin values." And we fled. They ran away. Word meanings: liable to acquire, likely to get, lanky, tall and thin, condescending, patronizing, sprawling, expansive, musketry, training of the use of guns. Now you have objective type questions. I first met Private Quelch at the training depot. These you'll do on your own. Fill in the blanks. The dash velocity, the muzzle velocity or speed at which the bullet leaves the rifle. Similarly, you'll do the rest. Subjective type questions. Why was Private Quelch known as professor? Because he had the habit to teach, he wore specs and he was a little stooped. These you'll do on your own. Writing skills. You borrowed a book from your friend and lost it in a park. Write a letter to him or her telling her about what you plan to do. So you have borrowed a book and it is lost. So you are supposed to apologize. Hi friend, I'm really sorry and I might give you the compensation amount soon after asking from my mom. Grammatical skills. Pick out the noun phrases in the following sentences and write them also. Cats like catching mice. इसमें noun phrase क्या है? Catching mice. Rewrite the following sentences by inserting the words given in bracket in the correct place. The plane has landed. The plane has just landed. Similarly, you will do these. अब है, encircle the correct option in the following sentences. Rose always smells sweet. Activity skills. Being a private Quelch, what steps would you take in your class? Explain. What will you do in your class? You will answer everything first. You will teach the teacher, teach other students, etc. I hope you understood this chapter properly. Read it again and revise all the questions to understand it even better.